How do you write content for an affiliate blog? That's what we're going to talk about today. I'm Doug Cunnington and I specialize in Amazon affiliate marketing, and I'm also a project manager, so I sprinkle in some project management ideas along the way too. If you're new to the channel, please take a look around, consider subscribing if you like what you see. Today, let's get into this content stuff. Now, let me tell you about the first piece of content I wrote. Back in 2013, I started my first niche site. Now, this was after I found the Smart Passive Income blog and podcast by Pat Flynn. It was a podcast. I love podcasts. I don't listen as much now, but I got started with the Smart Passive Income podcast. I just loved it. I got obsessed. I listened to every single episode that I could. I took maybe like a week or two and I listened to like 50 plus episodes, probably more than that, but it was a lot. I really like the concept of niche sites, so I decided, hey, I'm gonna go to Bluehost, get a hosting package, I'm gonna learn about WordPress, I'm gonna launch my blog, and I'm gonna put content on it. I'm gonna put useful content on the blog. And then the trouble started. How do you write content for a blog or a niche site? And I was, at the time, trying to create like an AdSense site, would show like AdSense banners on the site. And I just didn't know what to write about. So I had a couple keywords that I knew I wanted to, put into blog posts, but I was just like, how am I going to do this? I don't know the topic. I don't understand the niche. I literally know nothing about it. The ideas I'm going to tell you about will be useful if you're brand new to niche sites, but also if you're experienced. So if you're experienced, be sure to stick around. Like, it could be very useful for you. And the thing is, like, when you start working with, say like a new VA, or maybe you're just trying to explain to your friends and family and just other people that don't understand anything about these niche sites, these kind of answers can help you explain it in a simple way. First of all, the key thing you have to understand is you don't want to copy anything verbatim. I get a lot of questions like, can I copy information from other websites? Can I copy information from Amazon? Anything that you're trying to copy verbatim is probably not a good idea. Now, where are there exceptions? Let's say, for example, you take a small quote, couple lines or something from someone's site, and you quote them specifically, you give them credit, and you link back. That's probably going to be okay, particularly if it's a small sort of percentage of the overall piece of content. But in general, copying things is a bad idea. Another common question I get is around using sort of like a content spinner where it gathers different like sources from the internet all over the web, like Wikipedia or CNN or other niche sites, and then it sort of mashes them together and uses like a thesaurus to substitute words, so you end up with something original, but usually it doesn't make sense. It's very poorly written because it's done by software. So no copying and no spinning. So that's fairly straightforward. I hope a lot of people weren't thinking that anyway, but depending on where you were looking, it may be referenced. In fact, when I first started, Pat Flynn on Smart Passive Income, referenced using article spinners and stuff like that. And it was common practice back in the day. Pat Flynn used to do gray hat sort of activities. I've moved over to white hat stuff myself. But the point is, anywhere where you're trying to take a shortcut, where you're trying to do something easier or cheaper, or you're trying to do it faster, it usually isn't a good idea. Now, not always, but usually it's not a good idea to try and take a shortcut. If the shortcut worked, then everyone would take the shortcut and it would just be the normal route. So just keep that in mind. That applies for content for niche sites. It applies for like most things in life as well. So shortcuts usually don't work. Okay, let me take you back to what it was like writing that first piece of content. I happened to be house sitting. My wife and I were house sitting for some of our friends. And I remember sitting down in the office. It was a really nice workspace. And I had my laptop on the desk and I was staring at a blank WordPress post. And I was like, how am I gonna write this? So I started, doing what I assumed was the right thing to do. So I tried to look up other resources out there and see what they wrote about the topic. Unfortunately, I did such poor keyword research that there weren't even that many sources, and it was sort of an obscure topic. So I couldn't find much info. It took me so long to write. The problem is I didn't write much in general. Sure, I wrote emails at work and some documents at work, but it's fairly technical business writing. So I never had to like sort of put ideas together from different sources. And really that's what we're doing. When it comes down to it, we're gonna do research in different areas and we're gonna try and present information in our own words. Now, I'm going to tell you a couple ways to do it with very specific methods. So you won't have to like recreate the wheel or anything. I'll tell you what to do. So as I'm sitting there trying to write, I was frustrated, number one. I was a little nervous and scared for number two. And three, I was taking forever because I kind of have this perfectionist attitude, which I am trying to keep at bay. It's useful in some areas, but when you're writing content for your niche site or your affiliate site, being a perfectionist will really slow you down. And here's what would happen. I would look up these sources and then read the information. And then I'm like, okay, I kind of understand what's going on. Let me write some things out. And I felt like I was almost copying it, even though I was putting it into my own words. So I felt a little bad about the content, but I knew that I was actually putting it into my own words. So that was okay. So I would write, say, 2 sentences, and then I would go back to the beginning, and I'm like, is that right? Does that make sense? And then I would write the third sentence, and then go back to the second sentence and do the same process again. For a 500-word post, it probably took me 4 hours, 2 days in a row. So it took me like 8 hours total. I was writing so slow. It was so frustrating. But at the end of the day, I got it done and I published it. It ended up getting like a lot of traffic over time through decent backlinking and stuff like that. Even though it wasn't highly searched for, it ended up getting some traffic. So fast forward like 3 years, where I essentially did the same process. It's called the RPM. It's the research paper method. And it goes back to when we used to do research papers in middle school and high school and college and so on, where maybe you went to the library or you looked stuff up online, you gathered a bunch of resources, you read that information and then put it together into your own idea, potentially like repackaging some other ideas too, and then hopefully inserting your own ideas into it. Now, you don't always have to place your new ideas and arrive at like a new conclusion or anything. There's value in pulling information together. For example, look at Wikipedia. That's a great example where the sources are listed at the bottom. There's references at the bottom that you can go check, basically get an idea of how they arrived at the Wikipedia article. So that's a great sort of specific example of RPM. Now, if you're interested in seeing like a real RPM process happen, I have a couple videos. So one is describing the RPM in detail. So I'll put a link for that in the description. Additionally, I have a workshop where I like did the RPM method. So I'll put that in the description as well. So that's number one. You can use the RPM method and literally place things into your own words by referencing different sources. Another great way to get like ideas to write content, FAQ method, frequently asked questions. Again, I have a demo of this in a greater description. I'll put a link in the description below. But basically, this is great if you don't know anything about the topic. Now, I wish I would have done this for the piece of content I was telling you about. Essentially, you ask questions. So as you're brainstorming, you just write out questions that you have, go back, you look up the answers to the questions, and that's your content. Turns out it's a very natural way to write the content, and people enjoy reading that because it walks them through common questions they may personally have anyway. So it's a great way to do it. Again, check out the links below if you aren't familiar with the method, or if you want to see a demo of me doing that live. So this third way is super useful for product reviews. A lot of us will be writing product reviews at some point on our affiliate sites. That's the primary way to sort of get people engaged, get them ready to buy something. But one of the best things you can do is go read reviews all over the internet. So I think it's obvious to probably go over to Amazon and check out the reviews there. If it's a popular product, you may find hundreds of reviews, thousands and tens of thousands of words of content. Now, you can't copy it exactly, but you can get a really good idea of, what's good about a product, what's bad about a product, and just what users think of it, what real owners think of it. And you can pay very close attention to the vocabulary that people use. You can use the right terminology, and you could kind of get in the mind of an owner, which is very powerful when you're trying to write a review, especially a well-informed review. Further, right, there are other areas that you can do this research. So forums, you may be able to check out a forum and see, again, common questions. There may be product reviews, stuff like that. If there's not forums active, you can go to maybe like a Facebook group or wherever the people that hang out congregate online. So it may be Quora, it may be Facebook groups, it could be Pinterest, maybe it's Instagram, but you can get an idea about different products if you just find where those people are hanging out. And believe me, they're out there somewhere, you just have to find them. And lastly, the biggest tip I have is really go out and find the sources of information, the original sources of information. So I mentioned a few already. It could be, the Amazon details page, it could be the reviews on Amazon, maybe it's forums, maybe it's a Facebook group, maybe it's the manufacturer site, maybe it's the manufacturer of the product. You could take a look at the information on their website. You can look at the manufacturer's user's manuals. The user's manuals are really highly valuable. There's so much detail about specific products, and usually there's like a troubleshooting section, frequently asked questions section. There's like safety warnings and health warnings and stuff like that. All that information is something that you can go out there and consume. Now, the magic thing that you do is you get all these resources together and you sort of curate them and put them together, and hopefully you'll be putting together stuff that was never sort of curated before. So if you can curate it and you can place it in your own words, you end up creating a superior piece of content, and that's fantastic. Now, don't be afraid to link out to the other sites that you used as references. In fact, if it's not like common knowledge, right? So if it's not something that everyone knows, it's probably your job to link to the sources so people can go read that original information themselves. Like further advanced tip is if you go find a good resource online, if they put references in there, you should go follow those original references and then keep digging, right? Keep trying to find the original source of the information, because then it's not interpreted. You really can put together a better piece of information. Now, I hope you realize we went from the very beginning of not knowing how to write content to researching it, pulling resources together. And now I'm telling you, go deep, like find the original source of the information if you can. You may end up going to Wikipedia, finding references that they list, and then following those references, and then following the references of the references. And again, you may end up on like an academic paper where you actually can provide new insights based on all the research you've done. So when you put that all together, you end up creating something that's useful, something that should be interesting, and all of a sudden you didn't know how to write this piece of content, and now you're able to create something that's really valuable for that specific topic. Question of the day: how do you write content? Now, I know everyone doesn't write their own content. Maybe you have a writer working for you. So let me know, number one, do you write your own content? Saying whether you write your own content or if you hire a writer. And then in either case, let me know how you have that content written. So if you hire someone, like what info do you give them? Do you give them anything? Do you give them references? And then if you write it yourself, how do you get started? Do you outline it? Do you just write from scratch? Let me know, and be sure to check out the comments below. Some of the best ideas are from you. I want to learn something too. I read all the comments, so I definitely want to hear what you think. Hey, if you're still watching, you must like the channel, so go ahead and subscribe, like the video. I'd really appreciate it. Thanks.